Welcome back to the track Women-Led Collective Enterprises at Livelihoods India Summit 2021. We are very, very glad to curate this track with the 3IE. To begin with, I welcome Dr. Yamini Atmavilas. She's a Senior Program Officer at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She is the India Lead for Gender Equality India Country Office, and her career has had a focus on evaluation, research, and capacity building in the areas of gender, health, education, and economic development. Very, very warm welcome to you, ma'am. I invite you to present the track's introduction now.
Thank you so much, Access Livelihoods 3IE lead, for inviting me to this session. Really honored to be here, and congratulations again to Access Development Services for a wonderful conference amidst all the challenges. Some really fantastic panels that I've been listening to. I'm really happy to kick off this particular track because it's very close to my heart and definitely a very big part of the Gates Foundation's work in India. Two or three motivations for our work on women's economic empowerment and inequality become more and more emphasized, especially in the context of the pandemic. We know that India has always had a low declining work participation rate, especially for women. That has been of great concern to all of us over the last few years. Women's share of entrepreneurship is also very, very low, even though self-employment, especially in the informal sector, is a very, very large part of the economy. India has, I think, the third largest gender gap in entrepreneurship in the world. We also know there are other challenges like, despite access to formal finance enabled through one of the largest microcredit and self-help group movement in India, in the world, the National Rural Livelihoods Mission and NABARD. India, women tend to access informal finance more than they access formal finance. I think about 75% of the finance that women access tends to be through informal sources. And so I think in the context of the pandemic, a lot of these issues have also become very, very intensified. A recent study by the Azim Premji University, even the CMI data that we get to see on employment, tells us that, while there was a huge dropout of workers from the workforce, nearly, almost half, 47% of women did not re-enter the workforce. Those who had dropped out did not re-enter the workforce. We've also seen through other surveys and studies that, especially on the MSME and enterprises front, women's enterprises have been the hardest hit by the economic downturn, and 1 out of 3 either shut down temporarily or permanently. We have to track and see how many of them have opened back up, but indebtedness has grown as much as other forms of vulnerability and insecurity. And at the same time, the points of light that we are seeing are among women's collective enterprises. A recent report by SEWA talks about how women's cooperatives managed to remain resilient. Somerset, of course, these are well-known examples of being more opportunistic about diversifying their products, especially the need for masks, sanitizers, etc. But also the cooperativism ethic did help to improve redistribution of wages within the economic units, but also the social capital has helped women stay together and be more resilient both socially and personally, but also try to bounce back economically. So in the context of all of this, I think this panel discussion and the Swashakt work that 3IE and LEAD are going to discuss with their partners becomes very, very important and very, very salient. We need to understand what is keeping some of these these enterprises resilient? What are the kinds of business models that we are looking at? And what is that right balance between individual efficacy, household resilience, and profitability and business success? So what's that right mix, and what are the right set of interventions that one really needs to bring together, where we're not talking just about income generation models, but we're talking about income generation models of women, for women, with women, and in enterprises that are led by women and that are come with a certain kind of a model where there is social capital built into the model itself. With that, I think I'll speak about a couple of examples, and I'll give one example of work we are partnering with Seva on, because they're not on this panel, so I wanted to bring that experience in for you all to sort of reflect on. With Seva, we've been sort of partnering on, again, understanding this question of what makes enterprises resilient, and how can we help to both strengthen and scale women's small businesses and enterprises. And one of the big lessons is, of course, that some very basic things are things that enterprises struggle on, which is questions of compliance, understanding, getting the right information, keeping their, getting their due diligence run. So all of these are, which seem like very basic foundational things, are quite difficult. And so keeping that in view, Seva Bharat innovated on a model of enterprise support systems, where they have a sort of a technical unit that is embedded within the enterprise ecosystem that's providing these kinds of just-in-time services within that Seva ecosystem base. And so, it's a really interesting way of working where while you're trying to address some of these questions that are, otherwise would be quite daunting and time consuming, you're trying to convene a small group of, experts who can help multiple enterprises sort of get all of these systems in place. And so taking this systemic approach feels like a really, really important, foundational level work that needs to happen. And when it comes to, the rural livelihoods mission, some of these are well in place. There are really well designed and entrenched systems that are meant to support enterprises get a head start and grow. And yet we also see the challenge of both individual nano enterprises not growing very large, and secondly collective enterprises not having too many women. I think one of the evidence shows that probably only 2% of producer companies today are owned and run by women. And so, in that context, the Swashakt work becomes more salient and very, very important in trying to understand what are the kinds of interventions one needs in order to both strengthen existing enterprises as well as make the space much more vibrant and friendly to women and to the specific kinds of gender inequalities that women experience when they try to negotiate markets, when they try to set up businesses, when they try to access loans, and when they try to link up to value chains. A few examples of those kinds of barriers include women's disadvantage when it comes to time. National data, the National Time Use Survey data shows that women carry out a disproportionate amount of unpaid work in the household, and that leaves them far less time for productive work. And so, one of the challenges of setting up economic strategies that can help women bring incomes into the household is the limitations of time that they have. And I'm not saying this is for all women, but certainly women who are in self-help groups or who are in that life cycle stage where they're able to have more mobility, they also have a greater share of the burden of household reproduction. The second big barrier that women face is lack of an asset base, and therefore, this collective capital and collateral becomes very, very important. However, how do we help them turn that into more productive assets, and how do you actually help their enterprises and businesses grow is another very, very key question. A third sort of area is the lack of skills. And this can be everything from technical skills to psychological efficacy and the confidence to be able to negotiate with markets and to, undertake purchasing, undertake, just setting up and running businesses, and of course, business skills. One of the, and not to mention financial skills. Right. And so I know there have been lots of efforts at building women's financial literacy, digital literacy, business skilling. But, evidence also shows that when those same skills are imparted in a group setting or in a peer learning setting and using adult learning principles, such as just-in-time information, that they are able to absorb them better and they're actually able to translate them into action. Now, the challenge is how do you do this at scale? And so this becomes another barrier unless we are able to solve for it. The last, I think, big question and is one of the biggest questions for all of us is market linkages, and how do you ensure that women's businesses are healthily linked to markets, are able to negotiate with them, that women have the right kind of information that they need about pricing, that they are savvy enough to negotiate with both on the forward as well as the backward ends of the market linkages, and that they're able to link up with the right value chains, that they're able to understand quality. And so this whole question of market linkages becomes a very, very big thing that we have to solve for. And again, I'm really happy that the Swashak program is also taking on, some of the partners involved there are getting into these questions and really trying to solve this, not just for their own businesses, but for the larger field as a whole. So with that, I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion and this entire track that I hope that will come up with not just identifying and unpacking the barriers, but actually taking us to the solution space and the kind of tools that are required to actually strengthen and scale women's enterprises. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Apna Vilas. That was very, very insightful and to a level, if I can say, very inspiring also. Thanks a lot for your time. We'll go for a very short break and we'll join back in about 10 minutes for the next session. Thanks a lot. Thank you and welcome back. Now we move to the session on building a solutions toolbox for women's collective enterprises curated by 3IE. Before we move further, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping topics. So today's sessions are being recorded and you'll be able to view them on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it further. We also invite your comments and questions. Please take a look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you think of a question for the speakers at any point, you can type it in there and we will hold it for the discussion portion at the end of the session. So the moderator for today's session is Ms. Mridulya. She is a project head for STREE, lead at Kriya University. She assists in program implementation and provides inputs on research design elements to non-farm team at National Rural Livelihoods Mission. She also co-leads implementation and grant management for 3IE's Swashakt program. Welcome, Mridulya.
Hi, thank you so much for that kind introduction. Hello, everyone. On behalf of Access Development Services, the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation and lead at Kriya University, I welcome you all to this virtual Livelihoods Summit session on building solutions toolbox for women's collective enterprises. I'm Mridulya Narasimhan from lead at Kriya University, and I'll be a moderator for this session. For this session, we have with us Bidisha Barua, Senior Evaluation Specialist and Leader, Gender and Livelihoods at 3IE. We're also honored to have Mr. Charanjit Singh, Joint Secretary, NRLM, Ministry of Rural Development. Our next two panelists are actually our project partners in 3IE's Swashakt Evidence Program, an initiative supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to identify what works to enhance viability, scalability, and returns for women's collective enterprises, and to promote women's economic empowerment. We're joined by Suvendu Raut, who is the Vice President for Access Development Services, and Vijaya Smita Grandi, who is the founder and CEO of Chitrika, a Hyderabad-based organization promoting and supporting artisan collectives in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. You can read about all our panelists in the summit registry of the panelists. Thank you so much for joining us in this panel discussion, and we look forward to your perspectives on the issue of building solutions toolbox to help support, sustain, and scale women's collective enterprises in India. What we really hope to gain from this session today is unpacking what it really means to have a solutions toolkit. What does it even mean? How do we define a solutions toolkit? And more specifically, what does this look like when we look at it from the lens of women's collective enterprises? How do these complementary interventions better the financial well-being and the economic outcomes for women's collective enterprises? And what do we already know? What are the knowledge gaps? What can be worked on in terms of future scope of work when it comes to the solutions toolkit in itself? We'll begin today's session with a presentation by Bidisha, who will share with us about 3IE's Swashakt program, an initiative that even Lead at Kriya University is a very proud partner of. Over to you, Bidisha, for the opening presentation.
Thank you, Mridulya. Let me just share my screen. I hope it's my full presentation that's visible.
That is correct, Bidisha.
Great. Thank you so much, Mridulya, for the introduction. And thank you for to all the panelists who are here to enrich the discussion that we have just started. To Yamini for the excellent presentation to kick off the general tone and what we really want to achieve out of not only this particular discussion, but also from the track. So without losing a lot of time, and Yamini has already done a fantastic introduction, let me start by just touching upon why should we invest in women's collective enterprises for women's economic empowerment? Well, by now I think it is very well known, it's an established fact that women have very little access to productive assets. The endowments and titles and investments that women receive right from birth and through their life are different from men. They put women in a trajectory that is very different from men, and the economic choices that they have to make are therefore different. In this context, where women, and especially women who live in poverty, rarely own and are able to access economic or livelihood assets, what would work for women's empowerment? What would give women the control over their economic lives? Supporting women-led and run businesses can be impactful towards this, because it could give women something that they rarely have, and that is ownership of an economic asset. Yamini had illustrated how women often don't have productive assets on which to build further productive assets, to build their economic lives. These are very practical problems that we are seeing as we work more and more in this field. Women often don't have land, something that is very critical that banks look for, or financial assets that they can put as a collateral to gain loans. So what supporting women-led and run and led businesses could do is give women ownership of a productive asset, economic asset, and hopefully autonomy over it. We'll come to it that these two always do not walk together. And we also are cognizant that women's run businesses, independently run businesses, face a number of structural and systematic disadvantages, which can actually be alleviated through a collective setup, through collective enterprises. Women-led businesses typically have remained small, they are inefficiently run, investments are low, and they often are barely viable. And this is due to several factors, again, which Yamini has touched upon: a lack of access to adequate finance at fair terms, lack of access to input and output markets, entrepreneurial networks that are so critical for information sharing and for risk sharing. In a current context of post-COVID, risk sharing is a very important aspect that one needs to think about as one strategizes about enterprises. Women have inability to bargain in spaces that are primarily male-dominated, and these are just some of the factors. Collective enterprises may be able to address some of these disadvantages. Collective action and pooling of resources across a small group of women, entrepreneurs can help them to leverage further resources across and markets that may be inaccessible otherwise. Small groups, small businesses face high transaction costs to access the same set of resources, information, and markets that perhaps larger groups of the larger enterprises may be able to access. They may be able to bargain collectively for better prices and sale contracts. By pooling resources and labor, they may be able to benefit from economies of scale and the reduction of costs that come in with that. But we have to view, collective enterprises as being more than just a business unit. They need to be viewed as empowerment collectives, because they give women and particularly women who are poor in resources, access to social support, solidarity, and expanded networks, which are critical for building women's confidence and critical gender consciousness. And of course, problems are rife as it is with any economic, any business models. Some of the well-known being the problems of free riding, coordination, inefficiencies, and inequity. But we are encouraged by some of the emerging stories of successes in India, such as those that we have demonstrated for Seva, Kudumbashri, SERP, have demonstrated really successful women's collective enterprises, and they have been backed by strong and sustained institutional support. What is even more heartening is that the base for setting up collective enterprises for women is there in India. And as Yamini pointed out, the SHG network, the SHGs form a great platform to do so. Over 80 million women have been mobilized into SHG, and that was the last time that I saw, looked at the NRLM MIS. A recent evaluation report by 3IE, along with researchers in Stanford and with Bruti, have shown that SHGs in the past 8 years have done remarkably to provide women with financial inclusion, access to loans, and led to improvement in incomes. Very importantly, SHGs are playing a role to linking women to social programs, enabling them to access wage work. So the base is there, the exemplars are there, and now we have to think about how we can use it. So to do that, 3IE, with the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, launched the Swashakt program in 2020. LEAD at Kriya University are our partners in this, and I'm very happy to talk about this program in the next couple of slides. We are supporting the implementation and evaluation of 9 projects across India, which aim to set up and replicate models of women's collective enterprises. As you can see, we are spread across, our 9 states are pretty diverse. We, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Orissa, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, we have them covered. The products that we are looking to support also vary across agro-processing, such as makhana productions, millets processing, which is something that and spices, which Suvendu will talk about, as well as non-farm enterprises such as handicraft, handloom, bamboo crafts, and very interesting another one on retail services. We also are working in supporting and setting up and supporting the various types of collectives. So our projects aim to set up and strengthen FPCs, farmer producer companies, organizations, as well as associations, which are not formal companies, and aggregation models. So what do we do? What are we trying to achieve? In Swashakt. Swashakt offers and wants to test a set of solutions that are related to collective enterprises. We have situated this in the framework of women's economic empowerment, offered by Perez Nieto and Taylor, which is the power framework for women's economic empowerment. This framework illustrates 4 elements that form that are required for women's economic empowerment: women's power within, power to, power over, and power with. What is power? Power within basically includes the woman's capabilities, the women's agency to take decisions about what capabilities she can invest in, for her skill development, to enhance her knowledge and self-esteem so that she can engage in the economic sphere. Power too includes taking decisions, economic decisions within households, enterprises, and also the local economy and community in general. Power over, we have spoken about this in some form. Women having typically do not own or have access to livelihood resources and assets. Power over, the power over element of women's economic empowerment stresses on this factor that women have to be able to access and control financial, material, and knowledge-based assets. Power with. So, all the three other, the previous three elements that I have spoken about, one may say, these are elements that can be addressed through enterprises and other, solutions as well. What is so specific about a collective enterprise? That comes with the fourth element, the one in the dark red, which is the power with. This illustrates the power for women to organize with other women to enhance economic entitlements, economic activities and access entitlements. In this framework, we have tried to provide solutions that target each of the elements of the framework, of the dimensions of women's economic empowerment. The solutions that we are supporting with Swashat includes, and I'll start with the top left corner, trainings related to technical and technology trainings, skill building exercises. Some of our interventions also include gender integration trainings. All of these can directly address women's empowerment for power within. Leadership trainings, the upper right corner, leadership trainings, entrepreneurial trainings, soft skills can enable women to take economic decisions within households and enterprises. And this is actually a very interesting part, and I will let Switha talk about it, where there's a very, very, very interesting element of having a handheld MBA customized for women that we are going to be supporting under Swashat. Power over. We are supporting the setup of common production units, access to group credits, market access in the form of, and not only just connecting women's groups to local markets, but also higher up, markets that are higher up, the global value chains, as well as through online medium. And again, this is something that I think Suvendu and Switha will really be able to shed light on, because both their projects are trying to provide a space, common production units. One project is providing CFCs for women weavers. The other is providing common production units for spices. This is market access also comes, linking women to high value markets comes with branding, and that's again something that Suvendu can shed light on, about how can women appropriate a larger portion of the value by this exercise. The other, then of course we are supporting power with. It's obviously it's elemental to Swashat, forming women's collectives that are strong and that are sustainable is something that we want to do with Swashakt. So collectivization, setting up strong governance structures. We have models that are of two types that we're supporting with Swashakt. The first types are one-year pilots, where the focus is going to be to set up a strong collective. The second set of projects that we are working on are for 3 years, and these have a model that has worked. The collectives have been there. They have been sustaining for over some period of time, and now the focus is to take them to replicate those models and test how and generate knowledge about their scalability. Networks and partnerships are again, important components that we are trying to encourage and support with our under Swashakt, recognizing that these are critical points where women's enterprises lag. So in this way, Swashakt takes a very holistic and a multidimensional, look at women's economic empowerment and how WECs or collective enterprises can address women's economic empowerment. But we are also aware of the challenges that are endemic to collective enterprises, to women's collective enterprises, despite the stellar exemplars that have been shared so far. Most WECs, this comes from a study that was actually, I think, Access was a part of, which looked at a number of federations in India, and the findings show that women's collective enterprises are barely sustainable. They have weak economic and business models. They're still dependent very much on grant funding, which makes them financially unviable after a point. This often comes from the fact that the women's collectives lack self-sufficiency and internal capacity. They are very much still dependent on the technical assistant partner who, for support throughout. And what that happens is that, eventually it's not about empowerment. Women become not owners of the company, but workers in the company. There's also a lack of replication and potential for scale. There's not much of evidence around how much of this can work in a different system, and what are the elements that one needs to have in place in order to replicate. This is actually one of the things that we are trying to address in Swashakt. We have we have 3 projects which have shown success in different contexts and are being replicated in other states. There's also the assertion or the aspersion, perhaps, that WECs don't give a big push to women's income. So they do provide some amount of they have been successful in generating some level of income for women, keep them out of poverty, but that they are not able to access high value returns for the effort. So how can we address that? In a nutshell, Swashakt is supporting solutions that set up a strong foundation for WECs, generate high value for women, and demonstrate potential for scale. What we have here in the diagram shows exactly the pathway that Swashakt has in mind to move collective enterprises up the economic value chain. So setting up the foundation is important, and that's something that these one-year projects are going to try out. Focusing in that 1 year of just setting up the governance structure, basic technical and entrepreneurial trainings, providing financial linkages, ensuring that quality control measures are in place, and that there is a local market that is established. Going further, if you want, as we move up the value chain, and these are the target of the 3 year programs, with the component of gender training and preparing women for managerial role becomes important. To capture higher value in the product market, there are product innovations. We have projects which are going to be trying out, new products, new processed products of millets. Millets typically, that is, it's a health food, and everybody likes to dislikes to like it, but perhaps at the back of their mind they don't like it as much, but they like to like it. And how can we make that more consumable, more attractive? And there is also a focus on decent and safe workspaces. The CFCs that we are supporting are meant to be spaces that are where women can work in a safe environment. For example, weaving, as it happens in using traditional means, is unsafe. Using dyes that are harmful for health. We have projects. Our projects will set up CFCs where women are trained about how to handle these. First use non-hazardous dyes, and as well as what are the best practices for production. We are also testing on cashless transactions and app-based ERPs, and finally, how do we link these WECs to the larger global markets, urban, global, and online markets? So that's I'll stop here at the moment. This, in a nutshell, is Swashak. It provides. We want to provide a diverse, but at the same time concerted set of solutions for WECs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vitesha, for so beautifully articulating and laying out not only the program, but I think in the previous slide, just that image that you had, I think it in itself is a nutshell of the solutions toolkit that we're trying to talk about, right? The various interventions that we need to sort of look at when we're looking at women's collective enterprises. I particularly also wanted to reiterate perhaps or re-highlight your point on this move from social empowerment and now it being layered on with economic empowerment and the role that these interventions perhaps play when it comes to that, not only the transition, but that layering on itself for women's collective enterprises. And I think in that light, it's also very important to understand what the larger picture of all of this is, right? So Swashak being one program, and there being many similar programs, what is the larger agenda? What is all of this body of work really add to? For that, I would like to invite Charanjit Singh sir to please share with us the vision and the larger body of work being spearheaded by NRLM to provide support to new and growing women's collective enterprises. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. So I think a lot of ground has already been covered here. So I will give you just a brief overview of how the NRLM is working. So one of the sub-components of NRLM is Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program. There we support our rural SHG members in the non-farm sector, how they can establish the enterprise, and we support them through our community resource persons also, who provide them 24/7 hand-holding. And then we make some block resource centers also, and I'm quite happy to say that up to now we have covered around 178,000 enterprises across the country. So most of these enterprises are being run by women, and they may not be very big enterprises, but a beginning has been made in the rural areas. So this is the first component of the Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program. And then we think that why not they should also go to higher order enterprises. Then we have got one project of National Rural Economic Transformation Project. There we are having one more sub-component, that is the OSF. That is the one-stop facility. There we provide them a higher order of hand-holding. And then we have got this collectivization effort also through the cluster promotions. So, and we have already sanctioned 2 clusters, one in Uttar Pradesh and one in Chhattisgarh. So we feel that when our SHG members work in a group, then they can access the market in a better way, then they get the raw material also cheaper, and then the market linkage also becomes a better, and they can earn more profit. That is the third thing. And the fourth thing is that why not they go for still higher enterprises? That is the incubator support. And we are supporting some of these women enterprises who are already well established, and they want to go to still higher level. And we have engaged with some of the top-notch institutes in the country, like IIM Kolkata, then IIM Bangalore also, we are working closely. So this way we want to provide them still higher level of support. So this is the one part that we are providing them support. But the second part is that we are also in touch with the top institutes in the country, like CFTRI of Mysore is there. Then IIMR is there in Hyderabad. And then there are so many institutes in the country. We have got MOU with the most of them, and we are sensitizing our SHG members, and then we are leveraging the institutes for providing the support to our SHG members in this regard. So that is the another thing. Then we feel that we need to provide them an end-to-end solution. And as you know that now the whole thing is moving towards the online marketing. Then we have got certain tie-ups with Flipkarts, Amazons, and other private partners also. But we feel that why not we should have our own e-marketing place. And some of the states have already established their e-marketing platforms, like Udumshri has done, Bihar has done, Assam has done. Now recently, last week only, Sikkim has also started their own e-commerce platform. But we want to have one e-commerce platform at the national level also, and we are working in that direction also. That is one part. And I'm quite happy to say that today only our Honorable Minister has inaugurated a brick and mortar store also in Connaught Place. So in the heart of Delhi, we are also moving, and it's really a very good showroom. I would invite every participant here that they should visit this showroom, and then they can get the very good handloom, handicraft products or food products from all over the country at very reasonable prices. So we are working in every direction. And this is one store. We propose to open more stores in different parts of the country. So whatever opportunity we feel that that should be provided to the SHG members, and we are working in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I think there's merit in definitely acknowledging the fact that the efforts that are being taken look at a wide range of types of enterprises that can benefit from this support, whether that is an enterprise that has an entrepreneur who has an idea, but yet to perhaps start a business. So at the ideation stage, or perhaps at the conceptualization, implementation, and then the scale-up stage. So there is support, end-to-end support available throughout that journey for an entrepreneur and collective enterprise as well. And also that we're not looking only at support at an individual entrepreneur level, but also looking at the role something like cluster development can play in ensuring their enterprises at large and at scale, at mass, across geographies where there are these opportunities that can be tapped into. I'd like to then move on, and now also, before we address the toolkit in itself, I think it's also important to acknowledge what the need for that toolkit is. Bidisha has, of course, already spoken about that. Earlier, we had Yamini speak about that as well. Sir has also addressed the requirement for having interventions, support services, But it'll be great to also hear from our partner organizations who are on ground, working with the collectives, trying to understand the challenges that these collectives have to face. What are the potential solutions that can then be carved based on these challenges to address these challenges, right? I'd like to invite Sweta and Suvendu to talk a little bit more about there is enough evidence that collectives benefit women. But from your experience and your on-ground work through the Swashakt program, through the organization's other work, what are some of the key gaps in supporting and scaling collective-based enterprises once they are mobilized? Sweta, if I can hand over to you first and then over to Suvendu.
Yeah, thanks, Mridulya. Yeah, I think all the gaps, skilling, and what are the levers have been completely covered by Vidisha ji and Yamini ji. So my notes are no longer useful. So I'm just figuring out what to do. So I'm tossing away my notes, and I think I'll just add the context and my own experience. To quickly start with, I think one major thing is in weaving itself, women don't have space at all. Like I would tell, this is the first time when we went to actually form women collectives in East Godavari. They say women can't design. Okay, so from manual works to, if you say the creative works, women have been systematically marginalized. So for example, any creative works or technical works, the common refrain has been women can't do this, women can't do that. But in reality is they have never been provided space. So that is at a household level. So even like we used to go and discuss about basically new product, new designs, they say that we can't take the decision. Men in the household have to take the decision because technically loom belongs to them. So from then to now, the journey has been really great. And so no longer permissions are needed for any kind of production decisions. So then if we move at the collective level, the major gap at collective level has been women have never been part of any of the primary weaver cooperative societies, which have been started 1950s, 40s and 60s. It has proliferated. So women have never been the members of any of these collectives. So they are completely absent from the economic space at all at the household level, even though 50% of the work has been done by women from BCs and ADs. So from the time the clothing has, we have been weaving. So I think that has been the major second gap where they are not part of the any of the collectives. So no space, no ecosystem is a major gap that we have been working on and fighting since long. And unfortunately, like when we work also, when we support and promote these collectives, the employees who are part of these collectives are also mostly men. It's very difficult to get women who are skilled. So we cannot lament that we are not getting skilled women because that ecosystem has never been there. Do we get women accountant? Do we really get women who can understand production? So basically, as I say, again, the same, the ecosystem problem comes. So unfortunately, even the people who help support all these enterprises to run also are men, because there's so much dearth of skilled women that you, so because where there is a knowledge, the power rests there. So for us to really work, the gap is the knowledge has been systematically taken away from women. So at an individual household level, at the collective level, no membership, and even the new collectives that we are creating where women are members, the steering is done by men. It's been really unfortunate. So no space, no ecosystem. And secondly, when we start these collectives, basically, I think we don't trust women. We don't trust their potential, and we start with very narrow vision, because working across the entire integrated value chain is so overwhelming. So from the time when I was 24, taking these proposals to do something for women, we go to different funders, ask for money and say, what are the solutions? So they basically, I have been hearing the common refrain that we were women, production karne hai na karne do. Let them do production. You people are educated and say from cities, why don't you handle marketing? Basically the cream. So we don't come from that kind of school of thought. So Dr. Kurian always said, the cream has to be with the women, the marketing has to be with the producers. So basically, I faced in the initial 3-4 years a lot of issue in convincing that women can handle value chain. So basically, the way we conceptualize collectives, there's a huge gap where they say entire value chain from the yarn to the end market, women can't handle. So this has been the common refrain. So as a person who is privileged and say born in a city and have done MBA, I took 7 years to learn marketing. So leave off the education where you actually don't learn marketing. So women will learn in 14 years. So since I'm educated, I'm learning in 7 years, maybe I understand a little bit and maybe I can go out in the market. So there has been this constant undermining of the potential that women can handle the entire value chain. So the major gap which comes with this is conceptualization of the collective itself is very narrow. No processing, no infrastructure. So basically they do something, do a little bit of value add and sell. So you end up with a very suboptimal solution, suboptimal products, and completely compromised value chain, which actually adds on to the cost of the product. So not believing in the potential that women can do business and handle the value chain has been the second most important gap. And the third and the last thing, which is very crucial also, to understand collectives are economic private enterprises of women, group of women or men or the producers. They are not public institutions nor the welfare institutions. So most of the time it's very difficult to fight off, and especially Telangana, which has been the pioneer, Andhra at that time, the combined Andhra is a pioneering state which enacted Mutually Aided Cooperative Societies Act, where because of support of N.T. Ramarao, where actually collectives, cooperatives are seen as economic enterprises, private enterprises owned by a group of people, and the objective is economic. So many of the times what happens, the way collectives are also conceptualized, their economic objective and agenda is sometimes compromised. And it's a private enterprise. So sometimes even that is also compromised. So I think to sum up the three main gaps, there is no ecosystem to recognize skilled women. So you end up women being wage laborers, and actually the main steering is done by men. So that's one. And the second gap is underestimating the potential of women, and this in turn makes us devise collectives which are suboptimal. And the third one is not recognizing collectives as economic private enterprises of group of producers. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Smita. I think I definitely resonate with that one point on not looking at collectives as beneficiaries, but as benefactors in this entire process of enterprise creation and formation, right? Suvendu, over to you about your ground experience and anything in addition to what Smita has already spoken about.
Thanks, Mridula. And I'm really privileged women empowerment. Very nicely with that conceptual background, and thanks to the Joint Secretary for the macro view of what is happening in the country around women's empowerment and women's entrepreneurs. Like Vijaya, I will also focus on the things that is happening on the ground, and we'll share a little bit of access experience and journey with promoting women-led, women-based entrepreneurs. Since its beginning in 2006, I mean last 15 years, Access has been promoting women-led entrepreneurship. In those days, when in the beginning, it was all SHG-based model. So the first one that Access promoted in Odisha, Jharsuguda, it was a SHG-based model federated into an apex body, registered as a cooperative. That till date works very well. It's a good model setting in Odisha, in tribal districts of Odisha. And that model continues. We work with the SRLMs and the CSRs of different corporates. The same SHG and cooperative model still continues now. And along with that, consciously, in 2016, Access took a decision to promote more of market-led women entrepreneurs. So SHGs basically function in a non-formal way. So whatever they produce, they sell in the locality, to their villages, to the local market, and also that professionalism that reach to the higher order market is not there. So realizing this issue, Access consciously decided to promote women entrepreneurship in the market-led arena. That is how the first first private limited company of the women came in Jaipur. That is called Pink City Rickshaw Company. So it's a very tremendous model wherein women come together, they learn a new skill, that is of driving e-rickshaws and catering to a tourist crowd in one of world's foremost tourist cities, and doing well beyond the project period. They're doing well. They're now an established company, and the journey continued with few more private limited and public limited women-led companies. Vidisha knows about a few. And in recent times, in the last 2.5 years, we have also started promoting producer companies. One producer company in Badmer, women dealing with applique products and garment making. Another, the latest in the list, that is with 3IE social program. This 1,200 women now have joined hands to form this company. Several producer companies in 3 states, Odisha, West Bengal, and Rajasthan, in 5 clusters, and engaged in making high quality spices. So they're processing spices. So this journey has been quite enriching. We have been learning a lot on the way, and there are subtle differences between different models, from SHG based model to private limited companies, and to now producer companies. There are pros and cons. We have been learning this. So I will now focus on directly coming to your points. What are the key gaps and challenges when you have already mobilized the women? So now what is the challenge? So there are many challenges as put forward by Vidisha and Vijaya in their respective presentations. I'll just focus on 3. The first one is the social issues, the personal, social, household issues that box them down even today. I mean, if you see, when you go to market with a women's products, so what do they say? The market says that, okay, your product looks okay and good, maybe sometimes good, sometimes okay, but today if we place an order, can you deliver it in time? So they doubt. So that is the first question, and this comes from the social issues. So because there are competing priorities in women's lives in a rural setup, so and the family in the beginning doesn't believe in them, so they cannot give enough time to the social enterprise they have promoted or being part of. So in a given day, they would hardly give 2 to 3 hours to the productive work for the social enterprise. And then during festivals, for example, the market is up, so there are a lot of orders that would be coming in the festive season. But in the festive season, ironically, the women's household works definitely goes on. So there is a trade-off. So whether you go to your producer company, work for the for your company, or you have to devote your time to household rituals and all. So this is how in the beginning they struggle a lot to bring that professionalism in the work, supplying on time, supplying as per the quality required in the market. So that is the first step, the first challenge. The second challenge is around infrastructure. So and access to technology, access to know-how. So if Vijaya would agree with me, so for example, if they need the highest quality designs, the best designers are based in Bombay and Delhi and big cities. They would hardly, maybe sometimes 2 days they can give to a particular project on a project basis. But even if you pay them, they would hardly find it easy to go there and support them on a long-term basis. So that is that access problem, and then the infrastructure. So the best quality infrastructure, the best quality equipment and tools, they are so far away that the operational cost, transaction cost, they all add up to making the business not so feasible, not so viable, not so profitable. Second set of challenges are around those infrastructure requirements. And then the third set of requirements is about the marketing issue. So when I say marketing issues, women's products, especially in the rural setting, they're not identified in the market. So the consumers don't believe them that this product can be good. Even the best quality products, if they are not packaged well, so they will not. The market will not believe them. If the products don't look good, don't appeal to the consumers, it cannot fetch good prices in the market. So so in the beginning, you struggle. I mean, how to, so that packaging, that licensing, all these are costs, real-time costs, big costs. So for example, in a food processing thing like a spices thing that under the SOSAC program we have taken up, so each product cost licenses with FSSI and then product testing in the laboratories, and each variety test has to be tested. I mean, it's not like turmeric powder is tested. If you have 3 varieties of turmeric powder, each variety has to be tested, go through the same process, same costing. So these are huge costs for the startup companies like women's, when your revenues are not coming on the one hand, and then you are spending a lot of money, which are real investments. So that makes your cash flow really go haywire. So these are the 3 set of main challenges that we face when promoting social or collective entrepreneurship of the women. Yeah, I will come to the solutions when you ask me.
Yes, yes, I definitely do want to get to the solutions at a later stage in this session. Prior to moving ahead, though, would like to thank Charanjit Singh sir for joining. I believe he has an engagement that he has to leave for. So one final question to you right before you leave, if I may squeeze one in, since I have the opportunity to. In terms of just sort of from a policy perspective, do you think there are any unanswered questions or black boxes where research or data can play a role in informing NRLM's work in this space?
Thank you, and I'm sorry that I need to leave because this topic is very close to my heart and I would have loved to discuss it more. But our minister has just called me, so as you know, you can't delay. But I will certainly leave some thoughts for you to consider. The first thing is it's a huge challenge when you are dealing with the rural women. So as you know, they function in a particular society. There the reach of technology is less. Then they face so many difficulties to move ahead in life. So I want to highlight 2-3 things. One thing is the accessibility of the credit. No doubt I've seen that so many women want to move ahead in life, but they face difficulty when they don't get the credit. So we need to devise some particular products which can be assessed by these women very easily. Number 1. Number 2, in the risks in the rural areas are much more than in the urban areas, and then they need the mentors or what should I say, the business leaders who can provide them the support and the hand holding on a constant basis. So this I feel is very, very important. And I have seen that wherever these women have got the support, they have gone much, much ahead. They just need certain support. I will give you just one example. I was in one village of Madhya Pradesh. This is not of a non-farm sector. This is in the farm sector, in the dairy activities. No, I met one woman. She was so happy. Sir, now I can buy the things, whatever I want to buy on my own. I don't need to ask my family that I want this thing. Because when you get the money, then you can take your own decisions. This is a very... So I feel that every woman must be feeling like that. This feeling can't be described. So I was so impressed. And she said, sir, now I am earning 35,000 to 45,000 per month from the sale of milk only. And I have purchased more cattle. So just we made a producers collective and then we roped in National Dairy Services, etc. So a lot of change could take place. So this is my second thing, that we need a support to them. And the third thing is, it's a big challenge. So we need support of everybody, whether NGOs, business partners, so every multilateral financing agency. So whosoever is there, we need support of everybody. Only then we can make a change to the society. It's very difficult on the part of the government only to reach everybody. Thank you. And sorry again, I leave.
Not at all, sir. Completely understand. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think this also sets stage really well for our sort of next segment of this, where we want to look at the solutions part of how do we address these challenges. The point on partnerships that Sir had touched on is actually also literally the next session. So I think it feeds very well into this entire series of sessions that have been planned. In terms of sort of looking at the solutions itself, I think the solutions that both Access and Chitrika have looked at, when you look at addressing a challenge, they've looked at very different lenses. On Access side, the Grami Shakti project, we've looked at focusing on business and asset ownership to improve agency and also better decision making, and also looking at market-ready solutions through sort of designing and brand consulting. And on the other hand, for Chitrika, we've been looking at functional and technical skill building, capacity building, managerial skill building, and the unique micro MBA program that's there for artisans and women weavers, so that they can transition from a wage earner to perhaps a more and a subsistence-based model to a growth enterprise model. How were these unique challenges that need to be solutioned for? How were they identified? What were the specific needs that you thought needed to be addressed while you were solutioning for this? And what can practitioners perhaps take away from your experience on how to perhaps identify the need solution or the need intervention match? How do they look at a problem and an intervention and find that right connect? It'll be great to learn from both of you on that. I'll reverse the order this time. Suvendu, if we can have you perhaps tell us a little bit more about the Grami Shakti project and the solution for that, please.
Yeah, thanks again. I'll fix my discussion around those three key challenges that I highlighted in the beginning. So one set of challenges is around the social issues, the personal issues, how to make a fine balance between a household need and a enterprise need. A lot depends on how women are positioned within the household. So if you make them part of a social enterprise which is registered as a company, and they have a share to share with their family, that this is my shareholding. I am director in a company. So the moment they share this, their respect in the family goes up a notch. So in the household, in the society, in the nearer households, this makes them happy about themselves, and then the family respect is as well there. So that's how this producer company or a private limited company, that is important in their positioning in the society of the household. It gives them a sense of ownership, that I own a company. It's not just so when you gave examples like this under 3IE, this social program, the program we manage is named as Grami Shakti. This is a new producer company that we have been trying to establish and working with the women. I'll just go a little back and give you two examples. There is this woman named Anita in Jaipur. So in the beginning, to start with, she used to work with the police department as a home guard. So on and off, home guard jobs are like on and off. They come and go. Sometimes they come. Not every day they come to office or come to duty. Some days, but she would always be proud about her job, that I am working for the police department. So she always identified herself with a policewoman, with that uniform and all. And when she joined the Pink City Rickshaw company, that pride initially was not there. I noticed this particular thing about 5-6 months. When I asked her about her identity, she would always say, I'm a policeman. And then I also worked with this. And going ahead in 1 year, in the next year, when she started uh, coming to attend the governing body meeting of the Pink City Rickshaw company, and in the next year, when you ask her, she will say, I am the director of Pink City Rickshaw company first, and then I am a policeman. And sometimes she will not even mention I'm a policeman. So that pride in her being a director in a producer in a company is big for her household and everything. So this sense of ownership, this sense of pride is very important in bringing out that self-esteem in a woman. So that is the starting point. And then coming to the second thing, the infrastructural issues and the assets and all. So we establish common facility centers in the clusters that we work in, be it rural, be it semi-urban, be it little off hinterland, wherever. So important is there should be a good facility, and the facility should be top class. We work on the aspirations of women, not just like a very regular run of the mill stuff, but really high quality ovens, high quality grinding machines, high quality stuff that they can go on a visit to a city and this see whatever they see in a facility in a company, that they can see for themselves in their household or in their cluster or in their villages. So we bring the technology, the know-how to their doorstep. Instead of they going to seek all this help in the cities, through the project we bring in that. And we hope that in the next 2-3 years, while Gram Shakti 2 is in operation in the next 3 years, we'll be able to make them so empowered that they go to the market themselves and seek all this technology themselves instead of depending on our help. So that common facility helps them a lot, and they feel the ownership about the assets also. So if they are part of a SHG, or if they're individually coming to work in a company or in the same facility, that ownership is not there. But when the producer company owns that asset, all those equipment and tools, then they feel that this is our asset. So that is second. And number three, but the most important part is that identity part in the market. So therein comes the concept of branding. So Bipin always says that that what Reliance is in the market, our women should also be the same, seen as the same in the market. Our women should be selling in the 5-star hotels, in the niche. So you go to a Lemars, go to a big retail chain in Delhi or Bombay, our women's products should be there, placed there. So in the beginning, the sales might be low, but at least the women can see for themselves that such a high-class store and our products are there. So they believe in themselves, in their capabilities in the future. And this leads up to women's entrepreneurship being seen as something big rather than just laying low somewhere. So, for example, if you see under this Gramya Shakti program that has recently come up, so you see the packaging is like this. So these and it's named as, the brand name is Star and Spike, and it appeals to the urban audience. It appeals to the consumers based in cities, and every package, the color combination is different according to the different spices. So it can be jeera, which is colored as brown, maybe a chili colored as red. So and these are paper packets designed very neatly, very colorful and very nicely designed for the market only, and it appeals to the consumers. Similarly, in another project, the cookies are packed in a glass jar, neatly packed and placed in high quality markets. So this not only helps the women believe in their businesses, but also it fetches better prices in the market. So same product, but if you package them well, brand them well, and this biscuit is called Ding and Taste. So the name itself brings in some kind of a appeal in the consumers. So it must be good. So that kind of because when you place this product in a market, so nobody has first time heard about this. So if the name is not like this, they will not try to pick it up in their basket. So the name and the branding and the packaging helps them a lot. And we hope in the next few years, all these brands that have been put forward by us will make it big in the market. Everyone would come to know about it, and the women will be taking pride in their companies. That is the.
Thank you so much, Suvendu. I know there are questions that are starting to trickle in now. But before we move to that, Sweta, over to you. That has to be addressed and the solution for it.
Yeah, I don't want to actually talk a lot about Chitrika. I mean, there's not much time, but we work with 700 women. So from the starting itself, as I said, we initially at 24 we had this notion. I mean, it might sound not politically correct, but making professionals out of weavers, creating profession, these kind of ideas we had. And I don't think there is any change in the way that we have thought. I think maybe we were able to identify the gaps much better and have a more nuanced approach to things. But from the day one, I think we worked on the skills of the weavers. So more importantly, not that there is a gap. I mean, it is an artificial gap that has been systematically created. So we felt initially we thought techno-managerial skills is a term we often used to use, and like we have never ever in any of our training programs thought that will the weavers be able to do. Like personally, I'm really hard on myself and the team to push ourselves to some level, and we have been the same with all the women we have worked. So to give an example, the first training program that we did, but initially at that time, since it was difficult to mobilize women and I didn't have the understanding, patience, lot of fear as to how to really. So we did program with actually men and youth, and few of them are already the employees of the Producer Enterprises and Chitrika. We designed a program for 5 days and we did something like strategic planning, business planning, sensitivity analysis and all. We finished the program in 3 days. That's a level of skill in terms of understanding the numbers, understanding a lot of which weavers have. Basically, they're very good at numbers. So from there we started, and recently after the Swashakt project started, we were thinking we actually have developed a strategic note on skilling in general and specifically also for women, like what we should skill in what basically. So there are two things which emerge. There's loss of sense of pride in what they are doing actually. Like many of our staff members, men are not getting married because they have weavers and they have looms. Women, because many of them don't want to get in where there is a loom because there's a lot of work, and that work is also not respected, and it is like a 24-hour work. It's not like you start at 10 and close at 6. So there's a lot of loss of sense of pride in what they were doing. And second, most importantly, and also one of the government officials gave an example long back. This is also another starting days. Weavers are like tigers. They have a lot, so they are becoming extinct because they are not able to adapt to the changing environment and situation. But it's so true for individuals and also say an MBA professionals to weavers. Agility and adaptability, and in this definitely fast changing world, is what also they were missing out. So how do we bring a sense of pride back into them through skilling? And through skilling, how do we teach them a sense of agility and adaptability is what emerged as two key areas in skilling. And at a more operational level, through this program, how do we create 100 leaders who will take this value, this agenda forward so that it percolates down to and amplifies to many number of different weavers. So the idea is to create such kind of leaders who, at a philosophical level, the vision, and at the operational level, what a value chain and what a business requires is what we zeroed in on to. So basically, this is a 9-month program. It's a higher education program for women who, in a formal setup, who don't have access to this kind of a program. So it has roughly 2 to 2.5 months of classroom training, which might happen in a city or which might happen in the local area where they are, and a 6-month practicum where they will be practicing what they have learned, what they want to learn by being part of the collective that they are in, and or they become potential members. So basically, the idea is to, through this 9-month program, they are going to amplify and bring in more women and create an ecosystem for women. And skilling is only one of the medium, and the skilling will also add to what we are creating through 3I's support, integrated handloom hubs. Actually, many of the government schemes, actually, if you read what the schemes are, they're actually wonderfully designed. It's another thing that unit economics do not work out, that the money is too low. Like we want to do an MBA, we need at least 15 lakhs minimum even to get into a top-notch institutes, so which are government aided. So basically, what has happened is unit economics don't work out, but they are wonderfully designed schemes. They have all the components. You have yarn bag, you have dyeing unit, you have market, you have everything. So basically, through this integrated handloom hub, where predominantly we are aiming, hopefully we are successful to create safe space for also to women to work on design, to work women on dyeing. So they work on the preloom. So this integrated handloom hubs, which will provide, which is a space end to end, and it also has marketing component. So how do we create spaces in these kind of handloom hubs where it is viable, create safe place for women? That will also be a space for amplification of the skilling program, and also a lot of skilling, women to men, men to women, and women to the external world. How this skilling is going to happen is also an important experiment. So this handmade MBA will also be deepening our own understanding of how to create this viable handloom hubs where they are self-sufficient, local is the thing. So basically, the gap that we identify is basically how they have been systematically not been part of the ecosystem. The skilling will exactly do. So it has hard components like learning a design, say, or learning how to do dyeing, or understanding how to create a garment. 2, it has communication skills, leadership. It has a self-transformation component where we'll be working on the individual. So where they can actually bargain and create a space for themselves at the household level, to at the collective level, to the outer world in the 3 spaces. So we have all the softer components and also the modern day business components, understanding things through case study, how to manage the HR, how to manage the enterprise, how to be good board members, and how to create a safer space for women to be part of this collective. So it has both the so-called the hard component and the leadership and the business component. So that's what this handmade MBA is about.
Thank you so much, Sweta. I think moving beyond sort of traditional knowledge and adding, adding to that knowledge for the weavers so that they can stay abreast with what is the existing.
Sorry, one more point which I just wanted to add is,
yes.
Many of the times I understand we are producing for the urban customers. That's how sadly it has become. But when handloom was the mainstream clothing, when from a young to old, when from all occasions handloom was used, it was vibrant. So the time we slotted into a luxury product and for the urban market, it is slowly dying and it will die. So through the skilling also, we want to work on the brand, more of which I'll cover in the 3rd component. But basically what I want to say is, we are trying to create a producer to consumer model, and basically prosumer, producer to consumer, where it is very important for me personally also, which has been a starting point of my journey and my team, is to create clothing what weavers can wear. So most of the time weavers are not able to wear what they are producing. Right. So it's very, very important that it's not just for the urban market, not just for the brand. Should be able to wear what you are weaving. So it's also, it requires some kind of technical changes at all, but not just that, increasing the economic their own economic status to purchase what they are weaving. So it's extremely important we create that product segment. So that's also one of the reasons we deliberately chosen not to work in a lot of luxury garments or the luxury segments. So most of our weavers are like beyond 10th rankers. They're not in the top 10 rankers. So it's a conscious decision to work with people who are medium skill to produce for the affordable clothing brand, basically.
I think there's also a sense of pride that comes when something's made by you, for you, and also for others. So when you see that it's made by your own hand and you're able to, like you said, enjoy that product, but also everyone else is able to enjoy that same product in that same way as well. So I think there is definitely the sense of belongingness, which I think both of you touched upon, is a very important sort of need that's been identified and needs to be essentially addressed when solutioning for specific challenges. There are a lot of questions trickling in, so I'm actually going to jump right in. Sweta, there's a question for you. From Chitrika's experience, what kind of advocacy initiatives have worked in enabling women's partnership in leadership roles in producer companies?
So I think I'm the wrong candidate to whom, because we actually in a way never worked on advocacy. Also, one, that's not the area we have worked in, and I think, but my personal view is, like all these years, I think we want to do an advocacy where a change comes, like producing some articles and not bringing policy change has been a no-go for us. So initially we used to do certain workshop and we have stayed clear of all the workshops in the last 15 years. I mean, it has to add some value. So beyond that, what? So, but I feel that I first want to create like the evidences of how, like without creating the entire integrated value chain and marketing brand that is omni-channel, owned by the producers. So I don't think we have reached to a level where we can actually advocate, but there are definitely certain issues which bother us at a policy level, which why the poor have to be taxed, and specifically the craft persons and weavers have to be taxed, is an important area where many of the peers in other organizations and NGOs have been working on. So we were not able to do much, and it went on. Now 5% has become 12% now. So definitely the taxation area is one. And also many of the Geographical Identification Act to the reservation is not implemented. So I personally feel we always have to really fight out the unfair and uneven market by good design, market access, and doing a good business model. But it definitely affects the business when it is unfair, from the biggest of brands to designers to a small master weaver. So it has always been non-handloom pitted against the handloom, and a wrong representation that happens. And when what is rightfully theirs and there is an act and it has to be actually implemented, even something like handloom mark actually doesn't work at the ground level. So definitely to make the market and to make it a level playing field, whatever the acts have been implemented, I think the effective implementation where, I mean, I don't think much work has happened. And as a ground level organization at grassroots also, we have not cohesively, systematically worked on it. Like you have FICIs and CIs which actually lobby for the industries and for their thing. So I don't think from our side also, a cohesive body is there to systematically work, because not everybody comes with the bad intention of say ruining anything and pass a scheme, but definitely it requires a lot of eye opening, because we have to become the eyes of the policymakers sometimes. So systematic evidence gathering, and in terms of number crunching and how it affects the business, a lot of thing has actually also not happened to put it across at the advocacy level. So I mean, emotional tenure is good, but beyond that, what we need the evidence, we need the numbers. So how to actually make it work at the policy level.
Right.
I don't think I've answered the question, but that's not my area of expertise.
Not at all. Thank you so much. There's actually another question for you, Suvendu, which is, what do we know about the demand for products developed by such collectives? So in your case, the beautiful products you had showcased earlier, What is the take-up of those products like? And is some consumer education or awareness about these initiatives and the role that these products can play in impacting women collectives and the members' lives? Is that kind of awareness, education required?
Yeah, the answer would be twofold. So in some products like for example handlooms, so a general awareness of the consumers is definitely order of the day, because people in general don't understand the difference between handlooms and, I mean, I'm talking in general, not the people who really use handlooms. They know handloom, but in general they don't differentiate between handloom and machine made products. So that education will help. But in a normal products, other product like food processed food product like spices and all, uh, more than the awareness, the brand building process is important. So the market treats everyone equally, whether it's produced by women or men or farmers or non-farmers. Market will treat them as products. So if our product is good, packaged well, and it is branded well, and you promote the brand well, it will do well in the market. So that is more important than just, so that story is important. Made by women, made by hand, that story is important, but in the long run, the product and the positioning, that would be more important than that story for the market itself. So that's what I think is important going ahead for the women collectives. They have to believe in the market forces. They have to deal with the market exigencies and how to deal with all these market forces. That has to, we have to learn that basically. We cannot just say that consumer is not aware. So that maybe that consumer awareness will again be part of that market campaign. So these are the things. And one question is, I see that related question is about how the brands are doing. So this particular Star and Spike brand is a new brand. So I hope that will do good. But in the past, the brands that like Pink City Rickshaw Company, they are doing pretty well. I mean, if you go to TripAdvisor, which is world's #1 site for trip advisory services, it is rated 5. So everyone who takes a ride in the Pink City rickshaws, they rate it at 5, and the partners like hotels, the travel agencies, and all, they all rate it top. I mean, there is no one, even we hardly find any ratings which is below 5 out of 5. So most of the times, these partnerships, the branding is doing well. Yes, scaling up is the next step that we will need to do. In other products like Jing and Taste, the cookies company, they are doing also very well. They are selling in 5-star hotels. They are now selling on Nature's Basket. They are selling to Lamar's. So all the top brands that sell food products, they are selling their products. So the brand is doing good. So most of the brands are doing good now. Yes, the next step is scaling up.
Mridulya, can I just add? Okay. So for sustaining all these brands, actually, unfortunately, takes a lot of effort, because most of the time, even with educated people, negotiating with the market and the market players is a very difficult task. So we ourselves actually undergo a lot of trouble in negotiating and working out with the brands. So I think the link sustain, but the deal is whatever through skilling in whatever way. How do we bring in women to actually to the negotiating table with the main market player is important, because something like their own contracts are not in say the local language, it's in English, and legal language is very complicated even for educated people to understand. So overall, for these to sustain it, apart from the product pricing and all of it, there's art of just dealing with the market which is dynamic and which is unfair in terms of even not having local language contracts. I mean, it's difficult and unfair conditions. So all of it, it's not easy to sustain. It requires a lot of support. So that's the biggest challenge and fear after 10 years. So they should be able to sustain. I think we'll see how it goes. And other thing is that the customer awareness and all is fine, but sometimes customers also have to be brought down to the mother earth. because all the Amazons and Ubers have given them a lot of choices, and generally they don't understand what takes women to come to even to this space overall. So I'm not saying be satisfied with a shoddy service or a product, but expecting something which is not reasonable, and expecting homogeneous products in homogeneous products in terms of what a handicraft and handloom is. So awareness is one part, but at a very philosophical level, they have to be very sensitive to what's the background where these products come from, and they should pay for what they are liking, and the product is good and functional and not as a charity. So a lot of customer education have to just happen, not around just giving them information. So a lot of attitude change and being sensitive to how this value chain has been built is very important.
No, that's absolutely that. I think that's a very crucial point that you make. We have less than about 3-4 minutes left, but I wanted to sort of take this opportunity to ask you one rapid fire question, which is that these challenges are obviously evolving, right? So, I mean, it's not the challenges that we saw 2 years ago, and I think the pandemic has certainly taught us that the challenges are evolving, and so the solutions perhaps have to definitely evolve along with them too. What, in your opinion, is one future priority area that can strengthen women's collective enterprises? Or, you know, what is that one area to basically solution for if we're looking at the toolkit 2.0? Just a quick rapid fire on with both of you. Suvendu, if you'd like to go first.
So I would start just where we left. Invest in the brands of women. So it's one thing to set up a brand, but it's just the another level to promote it, to make it known to everyone, make it a household name. So it needs a lot of investment in the brands that we create. So that next step, the big step that we need to do and we are trying to do is scaling up the brands.
Thanks, Suvendu.
So quickly, I don't want to take the names of any organized retailers, but let's say the biggest say organized retailer in ethnic handloom or whatever comes to mind. So it is always very beautiful if you imagine that instead just move of the owners from that scene and we put women collectives in that scene. So creating really modern, rooted in traditional, and giving good experience to the buyer as well as the producer. So we create an omni-channel brand which is very forward-looking, but staying true to the commitment of the producers and completely managed, not as a lip service. So managing that kind of an omni-channel, I think that's a kind of example which is lacking. Either you have very private exploitative models, or you have something like suboptimal products which actually cannot be there in the market, which requires a lot of changes. So finding and building a brand that works for everyone in the value chain, for the producer, for the consumers, and the vendors in between, and which is more forward looking. That's one. And the second is like a small producer company, which even 300-400 members will require at least 3 to 4 crores investment if they have to have their own dyeing unit and the value addition unit. And if you're going to add the retail chain offline and online, so it requires at least a 10 crore kind of an investment. So it's very important. That's going to be an important lever if you want to bring transformational change in the incomes, so that they're not wage laborers. So how do we increase income from 6 to 10 to 20? It's not going to increase by giving good designs or selling in somewhere in Delhi. It's not going to increase. They have to control the value chain. They have to own the value chain. So it's very important we build a very interesting hybrid also kind of an ownership where vendors can also become members, because a dyer is also from the weaving community. So women is also from that community. So it's important that that kind of investments goes in to get a transformational change in the income. Otherwise, they will remain suboptimal.
Noted. Thanks, Vita. Bidisha, over to you. One-liner on what would be your one future priority area.
I think, I already echo what Suvendu and Switha have said so far, but just want to add something that needs further thought is unit economics. We have to think about setting up a strong foundation for these WECs and always having and keeping a vision of never losing sight of the vision that we have, that eventually it's for the women, with good economics to back us up.
Great. Thank you so much, Vidisha. That's a beautiful sum up of what we've discussed in this session throughout. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Access Development Service, our panelists, 3IE, our co-host for this session, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their work, for their support, and as we work towards adding to the body of knowledge around women's collectives. Thank you so much. Parul, over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for this very, very insightful session. We just made it on time, actually. So I would...
a minute post, but thank you for that.
It's just about, but yeah. Yeah, so I think we'll just quickly wrap it. Others are here. And we will start our tech checks so that we are on time for the next lineup.